I think if you kind of put up a mental guardrail, a good way to think about it is implementation without research and planning usually just turns into really expensive guessing, right?
Hey there, and welcome to a brand new episode of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hassman, and joining me today is a brand new rock star. She's a strategic marketing communications expert, a B2B industrial brand strategist, and is the CEO of DGS Marketing Engineers. Leslie Galbreath, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you, Kirby. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in. So I want to dive right into some of these questions because I did a little research behind you, and I know that you're living in this space. So I want to ask, how can a marketing leader ensure their work is actually moving the business forward rather than just creating activity? And I ask this because, I think I'm one who can create activity rather than moving it forward.
Well, it's the right question to be asking first and foremost. So I appreciate the question. It's a question that's not asked nearly often enough. So, in the simplest terms, tie marketing to business outcomes, not marketing outputs. And these are not the same thing. Outputs are activities and outcomes are results, and results are what we're after. I think one of the biggest mistakes marketing teams make is confusing motion with progress. Like being busy is easy, proving business impact is much harder. So I think of it in terms of, marketing really must support organizational objectives. But marketing objectives also need to focus on the things that marketing can influence, because marketing cannot, in most cases, create sales in a vacuum. We can create influence in terms of awareness, understanding, perception, education, preference, and those things then lead to sales. I always like to say that the role of marketing communications is to create a warm and fuzzy climate for selling, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to campaigns, I think it's also really important to be able to defend the business problem that you're solving and the thought process or behavior that you're trying to change. And for customers, this is really simple. It's two questions. It's what's in it for me and why should I care? Like those are the only two questions that matter to them. So we need to be able to answer those. And so I think strong, business leaders create a clear connection between the business problem, the audience, and the outcomes they're measuring. Because at the end of the day, the question shouldn't be, as you said, did we get a bunch of stuff done? Did we launch it? I can send out 20 press releases a year, and that's a lot of activity, but it could actually do me a disservice. The question should be, did it move the business forward? And when we look at that and measure that, if the metric we're looking at can't be connected directly to an objective, it's probably a vanity metric, and those become very dangerous. They take us down rabbit holes. So I like to say maybe that average marketing creates activity, but great marketing creates impact. Maybe.
I like that a lot. And I'll be the first. I kind of called myself out in the question because it's true. I think that when, especially as you're new to whatever you're into, it's like, I just want to be busy because I feel like busy is I should be doing something, right?
Yeah.
And so that one hit me in the heart.
It's the right question, as you say. Yeah. And I think there is temptation to return to tactics that are familiar, return to things that we've done in the past. That's why strategic planning is so important. If you replicate just year after year, cycle after cycle, the same sort of conventional activities without resetting those activities against new objectives, you can create a lot of activity and you can appear busy and you can spend a lot of money that way, right? To be sure. Marketers manage big budgets. There's a whole conversation around licensure that I think needs to be had when it comes to marketing. But it shouldn't be about busyness. If we're really effective and strategic, it should and can be a nice tight program that's rooted in results.
Yeah. And I've seen you've said, sort of one of your themes is let your goals lead.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how should companies decide which marketing channels are actually worth investing in?
Well, yeah, here again, simplest answer, a channel is not a strategy. absolutely not a strategy. And every channel should be supported by a sound marketing strategy. So, I think a lot of companies choose marketing channels kind of backwards. They see another brand succeeding on a platform and assume, okay, I need to be there too, replicating that activity. And that is absolutely the tail wagging the dog. Too often organizations invest in tactics before they've thought through the strategy. And in my world, the way I think about this is strategy is the how, right? And tactics are the what. Channels are implementation decisions, not starting points. 99% of the time, they're not going to be a starting point for strategy. So you shouldn't be thinking about channels first. I'm a big believer in RPI. I teach it. It's kind of a joke around here at the agency that my staff probably chants it in their sleep, but we do everything around RPI: research, planning, implementation, and evaluation. It's a very simple concept, right? 4-step strategy, but it's reliable and repeatable. And it works every time. If something isn't working in a marketing program, it's likely because the R or the P has been skipped, the research and the planning. And channel decisions should happen inside that process, not before it or outside of it. So, I think if you kind of put up a mental guardrail, a good way to think about it is implementation without research and planning usually just turns into really expensive guessing, right? So that's not something you want to be able to, or you want to stand up in front of the board of directors at the end of the year, or your boss or your client or whatever the case may be, and say, well, we took a swing at it, right? We used research to reduce the uncertainty in the planning. We developed thoughtful objectives. We understood our target audience. And I think that's another important point. Like if you make the effort to understand your target audience, you will understand their preferred communications channels. You'll also understand what it is they need to hear from you, that's going to address their pain points. So ultimately, the best marketing channel is one that supports your objective and where your customers are. Just because a platform is loud doesn't mean it's the right place to be.
Yeah, I think you're preaching to the choir on this one. This is something I think that so many times we skip the foundational steps that make what we're trying to do effective.
Yes.
And the other thing I've seen is that, and you kind of, you referenced it in the last where it's like you see a competitor doing something on this channel and we're just gonna mimic what they're doing, but then all the brands start sounding alike. So how do we avoid sounding like every competitor in the space?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a broken record here with my answer, but ultimately companies start to sound the same when they stop listening. I mean, it's really tempting to spend too much time talking about ourselves, isn't it? Like it's
Yeah.
human nature to
Yeah.
think. I mean, here I am on your podcast, right? But it's kind of human nature to think, okay, if I could just explain it to them one more time or in a different way or with 100 more details, right? They'll
Yeah.
agree with me, right? And
Yeah.
I think a lot of brands focus really heavily on what they want to say about themselves. And in that process, they lose sight of what their customers need and need to hear. So brands are talking at their customers and too much about themselves. And in my view, that's not what good marketing is about. Good marketing is about understanding, again, what your customers need and giving it to them. This is a concept that when if I'm teaching class or we're doing this in sort of an educational environment, this can be kind of a jaw dropper because I think marketing is often associated with spin, right? Or persuasion. And good marketing is more about listening to what customers need and figuring out how to solve for that. So it has to be driven by them. And if you're listening really carefully, you can actually anticipate what your customers need before they know they need it. And that's a huge competitive edge, in my opinion. But you only get there through listening. And the listening can happen, in brand research, sales calls, intercept surveys at trade shows, customer support calls, whatever the case may be. But those are the things that are really going to inform messaging that are going to allow you to differentiate yourself and offer a different value proposition. Because at the end of the day, if your competition can just swap their logo out for yours, right, you're not differentiating at all.
Yeah. No, I love what you say about listening. I just said the other day, I'm like, the best marketing doesn't feel like marketing.
No,
right? It feels like you're serving.
Yeah, it feels like a conversation. I think the adage, talk less and listen more, certainly applies here. But again, our instinct is when we think of marketing is to push. It's all about, push devices. How do we tell you this? How do we explain this to you? And I think when we stop, pause and just say, listen, take in the surroundings, understand the situation, and even better, ask you what's the pain point or what's the opportunity, then we have an ability, to rise above the noise and be heard.
Yeah. This is really good, Leslie. I can already tell this is going to be one of those conversations I re-listen to. And so final question for you. In your experience, when marketing works best inside a company or an organization, what does the relationship between marketing, sales, and leadership sort of look like?
That's another really good question. So in my view, marketing works best when the leadership team treats it as a strategic business function and not an afterthought.
Yeah.
Healthy organizations, it happens too often, healthy organizations give marketing a seat at the table early because marketing influences perception, positioning, customer understanding, growth, long-term brand value, all of those good things that add up to success. I think when marketing is brought in at the end to make it look good or promote something after decisions are already made, or, hey, we've invented something that no one really needs, help me sell it, right? The results are usually proportional to the level of involvement. Certainly the saying, putting lipstick on a pig, comes to mind when you think in those terms. So the strongest relationships in my experience between leadership, marketing, and sales are built on alignment, right? Everyone knows and agrees on the organizational objectives. They agree on the audience who can help them achieve those objectives. And they most importantly agree on the change they're trying to create. So I think making sure that marketing is connected to real conversations, because salespeople they hear objections in the field, pain points every day. The leadership team understands big picture, the priorities, and marketing can help translate all of that into positioning and messaging and ultimately influence. So when those things operate collaboratively instead of in silos, marketing becomes kind of a superpower. It becomes a lever, you can pull for growth.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I've often said that. I mean, it's actually funny when I first started doing this, which is almost 12 years ago. One of the big shifts I saw is that people started, instead of bringing me in at the end, they brought me in at the beginning, and I was like, it made all the difference. It made all the difference in their success. It made made a big difference in ours. And so I love what you're saying about that, about having marketing at the table from the very beginning, because it really does shift the whole conversation.
It really does. I think when we treat marketing as sort of, the icing on the way out the door, you definitely are not getting the full benefit of what marketing as a craft. And that's how I think of marketing. It's a blend of science and creativity. You have to use science-driven. Again, we come back to conversations about everyone's a marketer. Everyone thinks they're a marketer, right? But if you involve skilled marketers in the conversation up front, I really believe you have a better outcome.
Yeah. This has been really fun, Leslie. Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, so they can find me on LinkedIn, and they can also visit our website at dgsmarketing.com.
That's awesome. This has been really fun, Leslie. We will have to do it again sometime, okay?
I appreciate it very much. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll see you next time.